The sound of shattering glass exploded through the living room, followed by a woman's scream that tore through the humid Lagos night. Adanna stumbled backward, her cheek burning from the force of Chidi's palm, blood trickling from a cut where a flying shard had grazed her temple. Through blurred vision, she saw him standing there, her husband of 12 years, the father of her 3 children, with his fists still clenched and rage distorting his handsome face into something monstrous. "You embarrassed me in front of my colleagues," Chidi roared, his expensive Italian leather shoes crunching on broken ceramic as he advanced toward her. The remnants of their wedding china lay scattered across the marble floor of their Victoria Island home, each piece of memory now destroyed. Walking into that dinner party dressed like a common market woman. "Do you know who I am? What I've built?" Adanna's hands trembled as she pressed them against the wall behind her, her Ankara dress, the one she'd carefully chosen because it reminded her of happier times, now stained with blood. This wasn't the first time. It wasn't even the 10th. But tonight, something inside her cracked wider than the china on the floor. Tonight, she saw her 9-year-old daughter Zainab peeking through the staircase railings, tears streaming down her face, and Adanna knew she couldn't let her baby girl think this was what love looked like. "Chidi, please," she whispered, her voice hoarse from previous screaming. "The children. The children need to learn that a man is king in his own house." He grabbed her arm, his fingers digging into her flesh hard enough to leave bruises that would bloom purple by morning. This was the pattern of their marriage now. Every few nights, after late meetings that reeked of expensive perfume that wasn't hers, Chidi would come home looking for a reason to unleash his fury. Some nights it was her cooking. Other nights it was how she styled her hair. Tonight, it was her dress. What would you do if you walked in on this? Hit like if you've been betrayed, and comment below where you're watching from. Behind Chidi, through the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the glittering Lagos skyline, Adanna could see their reflection. A successful architect and his wife, living in a mansion worth hundreds of millions of naira, members of the prestigious Ikoyi Club, parents to 3 beautiful children. From the outside, they were the perfect Nigerian power couple. From the inside, they were rotting. "Let me go," Adanna said quietly, and something in her tone made Chidi pause. It wasn't her usual fearful compliance or desperate pleading. It was something else. Something hollow and final. He released her arm with a shove that sent her stumbling. "Clean this mess up before morning. I have an important breakfast meeting with the minister's people." He straightened his Rolex, adjusted his agbada, and headed toward the stairs where Zainab quickly scrambled away. "And don't wait up. I'll be sleeping in the guest room." The guest room. Where he always went after these episodes, as if sleeping apart somehow absolved him of what he'd done. As if the distance of one floor could erase the violence. Adanna waited until she heard his footsteps fade, until the guest room door slammed shut. Then she stood there in the wreckage of her living room, blood cooling on her face, and made a decision that had been building for 12 years. She pulled out her phone with shaking hands and typed a message to her sister Ngozi in Abuja. "I'm ready. Help me disappear." The response came within seconds. "Pack light. I'm sending a car tomorrow at noon. He'll never find you. Tomorrow." She had less than 12 hours to plan an escape that would need to be perfect. Chidi Okonkwo was not a man who accepted defeat. He had connections everywhere. In government, in business, in the police force. If he discovered she was planning to leave, he would make sure she never made it out the door. Or worse, he would take the children. Adanna moved through the house like a ghost, gathering her daughter from the stairs and holding her tight. "Mama is going to fix everything," she whispered into Zainab's braided hair. "I promise." But as she climbed the stairs to check on her sleeping sons, 11-year-old Emeka and 7-year-old Obinna, she didn't notice the figure watching from across the street. A woman in a red BMW, her manicured nails tapping the steering wheel, her eyes fixed on the Okonkwo mansion with predatory focus. The woman's phone buzzed. She answered without looking away from the house. "Yes, he's home. No, the wife is still there. Don't worry, darling. After tonight's performance, she won't last much longer. Then you and I can finally stop hiding." She laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Just a few more weeks, Chidi, my love. Just a few more weeks." Inside the house, Adanna finished tucking in her children and returned to her bedroom. the master suite she once shared with her husband before the violence pushed them into separate worlds. She locked the door and pulled out her small leather journal, the one she'd been keeping for 3 years now. Page after page documented every bruise, every threat, every time Chidi had raised his hand. She'd photographed injuries, saved hospital reports from the time she'd claimed to have fallen, recorded voice memos of his verbal abuse. She wasn't just planning to disappear. She was planning to destroy him. Her phone buzzed again. Ngozi, the lawyer says you have enough evidence to put him away and take everything. But you have to move fast. And you can't tell anyone. Adanna allowed herself a small, grim smile as she packed her evidence into a waterproof envelope. Tomorrow at noon, while Chidi was at his breakfast meeting, she and the children would vanish. And when Chidi returned to an empty house, when he realized his perfect life was crumbling, his worst nightmare would only be beginning. But what Adanna didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that her disappearance would unravel secrets far darker than domestic abuse. Secrets that would drag both her and Chidi into a web of betrayal involving his business partner, his mistress, missing money, and a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of Nigerian society. The game was about to change. And nobody was prepared for what came next. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more gripping stories like this. What do you think happens next? Comment below. Noon came with brutal precision. Adanna stood at her bedroom window, watching Chidi's black Range Rover disappear through the estate gates, his driver navigating the chaotic Lagos traffic toward his supposed breakfast meeting. The morning sun beat down on Victoria Island, turning the city into a shimmering mirage of heat and exhaust fumes. In the distance, she could hear the call to prayer from a nearby mosque mixing with the honking of Danfo buses and the shouts of street vendors. She had exactly 90 minutes. Maybe less if Chidi's meeting ended early. Zainab, Emeka, Obinna. Her voice was steady, rehearsed. Come downstairs, please. Her children appeared within moments, school uniforms still crisp despite the heat. They'd been ready since dawn, sensing something momentous in their mother's unusual calm. Zainab's eyes were swollen from crying the night before. Emeka moved with the careful watchfulness of a child who'd learned to predict violence. Even 7-year-old Obinna seemed subdued, his usual morning energy muted. "Where's Daddy?" Emeka asked, his voice careful. "At work, baby." Adanna knelt before them, gathering all three into her arms. "Listen to me very carefully. We're going on a little trip to Aunt Ngozi's house in Abuja. Just for a few days. An adventure. What about school?" Zainab's question was tentative, hopeful. "You'll have a break. Now quickly, we need to pack your favorite things. Just 1 bag each. Can you do that for Mama?" They scattered upstairs, and Adanna released a breath she'd been holding for what felt like years. Her hands shook as she pulled out 3 small suitcases she'd hidden in the back of her closet. Everything else, clothes, toys, photo albums, would have to stay. Chidi monitored their bank accounts obsessively. If she'd made any unusual purchases in recent weeks, he would have noticed. The doorbell rang, sharp and insistent. Adanna's heart stopped. Through the security monitor, she saw a silver Toyota Camry idling at the gate. The driver, a middle-aged woman in a purple headscarf, held up her phone, showing a text message from Ngozi. The code was correct. This was her escape. But as Adanna moved to buzz the gate open, another car pulled up. A red BMW. Her blood turned to ice. The woman who stepped out was stunning. Tall, curves wrapped in a designer pencil skirt and silk blouse, her Fulani braids arranged in an elegant crown. She moved with the confidence of someone who owned the world, her designer heels clicking against the pavement as she approached the intercom. "Mrs. Okonkwo?" The woman's voice was honey smooth. "I'm Kemi Adelik, your husband's business partner. We met briefly at the club last year. I need to speak with you urgently about Chidi. It's about his safety." Adanna's mind raced. Chidi had mentioned Kemi Adelik. She was the co-owner of their architectural firm, the daughter of a prominent Yoruba politician. But something felt wrong. The timing was too convenient, the woman's smile too practiced. "I'm sorry, Miss Adelik, but this isn't a good time. Mrs. Okonkwo, please." Kemi's voice dropped, urgent now. I know what he does to you. Everyone at the firm knows. And I know you're planning to leave today. She held up her phone, and Adanna's stomach plummeted. On the screen was a screenshot of her text to Ngozi from last night. How could this woman possibly have access to her messages? Let me in, Kemi said softly. Or I call Chidi right now and tell him his wife is running away with his children. Your choice. Adanna's finger hovered over the gate button, her mind spinning through impossible calculations. The Camry driver was still waiting, engine running. Her children were upstairs, vulnerable. And this woman, this stranger who somehow knew her secrets, stood between her and freedom. She pressed the button. The gate swung open. Kemi walked in like she owned the place, her eyes sweeping over the expensive furniture, the imported marble, the African art that Chidi collected like trophies. Beautiful home, she murmured. Such a shame about all the blood on the living room wall. You missed a spot when you cleaned up last night. Adanna's throat constricted. What do you want? What I want. Kemi laughed, settling onto the Italian leather sofa like a queen claiming her throne. I want you to leave, Mrs. Okonkwo. I want you to take those children and disappear, just like you planned. But first, you're going to do something for me. I don't understand. Chidi Okonkwo is not the man you think he is. Yes, he's an abusive bastard who deserves to rot in prison. But he's also stolen 40 million naira from our firm. Money that belongs to me, to my family's investment. And I want it back. 40 million naira. Nearly $100,000. Adanna's mind reeled. I don't know anything about missing money. Don't lie to me. Kemi's mask cracked, revealing something cold and calculating beneath. You're his wife. You have access to his home office, his computers, his safe. I need bank statements, transfer records, anything that proves where he moved the money. She leaned forward. Get me that evidence, and I'll make sure you and your children disappear so thoroughly that Chidi will never find you. Refuse, and I make one phone call that destroys your escape before it begins. Upstairs, Adanna heard her children's footsteps moving between rooms, innocent and trusting. The Camry driver was still waiting outside. Time was bleeding away with every passing second. I need to think. You have no time to think. Kemi stood, her elegant facade completely gone now. Chidi's meeting ends in 70 minutes. Either you get me what I need, or you lose everything. Your freedom, your children, your life. Adanna's hands clenched into fists. All these years, she'd endured Chidi's violence in silence, believing she had no power, no options. But now, standing in her living room with this stranger who held her fate in manicured hands, something shifted. She'd spent years being a victim. Maybe it was time to become something else. His office is on the second floor, she said quietly. But the safe requires a fingerprint and a code. Kemi smiled, predatory and satisfied. Then we'll just have to be creative, won't we? What Adanna didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that Kemi Adeleke wasn't just Chidi's business partner. She was his mistress. And the money she claimed was stolen? It was sitting in an offshore account they'd opened together, meant to fund their new life after Chidi divorced his wife. But Chidi had made the mistake of falling in love with someone else. Someone younger, more malleable. And Kemi Adeleke didn't share. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Do you think Adanna should trust Kemi? Comment your thoughts below. Chidi's office was a shrine to his ego, walls covered with architectural awards, photographs of buildings he designed across West Africa, a massive mahogany desk imported from Italy. Everything was precisely arranged, controlled, just like he tried to control Adanna's life. But now, as she stood at the threshold with Kemi breathing down her neck, the space felt different. Smaller. Less intimidating. The safe is behind that painting, Adanna said, pointing to a large canvas depicting the Lagos skyline at sunset. But I told you, I don't have the code. Kemi moved past her with purposeful strides, her heels silent on the plush Persian rug. The code is 2-7-0-9, she said casually, reaching for the painting. His mother's birthday. Men like Chidi are predictable. They think they're clever, but they're just narcissists with patterns. Adanna's stomach twisted. How do you know that? Kemi's smile was sharp as she revealed the wall safe's digital panel. Because, dear Mrs. Okonkwo, your husband and I have been sleeping together for 3 years. I know everything about him, including the fact that he keeps a second phone in this safe with photographs of every woman he's ever beaten. Including you. The words hit like a physical blow. 3 years. While Adanna was nursing Obinna as a baby, Chidi was already betraying her. While she was covering bruises with makeup and lying to concerned friends, he was in this woman's bed. Why are you telling me this? Adanna's voice was barely a whisper. Because you need to understand what kind of man you married. Kemi pressed her thumb against the biometric scanner. It rejected her. She cursed under her breath. And because I want you to hate him as much as I do. But you slept with him. I was in love with him. Kemi spun around, and for the first time, Adanna saw genuine emotion crack through her polished exterior. I thought we were partners. In business, in bed, in everything. He promised to leave you, to build a life with me. Then I discovered he's been seeing another woman. Someone barely 25 years old. A secretary at one of our clients' offices. Adanna's head spun. Not one affair. Multiple. The magnitude of Chidi's betrayal expanded like a dark stain spreading across everything she thought she knew about her marriage. The fingerprint, she said suddenly. You need his fingerprint. Obviously. Which is why, Kemi pulled something from her designer handbag. A glass. This is from your kitchen. Chidi's coffee cup from this morning. I watched him through the window, watched him drink, watched him set it down. His fingerprints are all over it. The level of premeditation was staggering. Kemi hadn't just shown up randomly. She'd been watching the house, planning, waiting for this exact moment. You're insane, Adanna breathed. I'm practical. Kemi carefully lifted Chidi's fingerprint from the glass using a piece of clear tape, a trick she'd clearly practiced. And right now, Mrs. Okonkwo, my insanity is your ticket to freedom. So either help me, or watch your escape fall apart. Downstairs, a door slammed. Both women froze. Mama! Zainab's voice drifted up the stairs. There's a woman outside saying she's our driver. Should I let her in? Adanna's heart hammered. The Camry. She'd forgotten about the driver, forgotten about time bleeding away, forgotten about everything except this nightmare unfolding in her husband's office. Tell her we'll be down in 5 minutes. Adanna called back, then turned to Kemi. Hurry. Kemi pressed the tape against the biometric scanner. It took 3 tries, her hand steady despite the pressure. On the 3rd attempt, the safe clicked open with a soft mechanical whisper. Inside was more than Adanna could have imagined. Stacks of crisp naira notes. Multiple passports, including one for Chidi under a different name. Flash drives. Documents. And there, nestled in the back, a silver phone she'd never seen before. Kemi grabbed the phone and the documents with practiced efficiency. But as she reached for the money, Adanna's hand shot out and gripped her wrist. That money is mine, Adanna said quietly. 12 years of beatings. 12 years of humiliation. 12 years of raising his children while he destroyed my soul. That money is mine. For a long moment, they stared at each other. 2 women bound together by the same man's cruelty, separated by everything else. Fine, Kemi finally said. Take half. I get the documents and the phone. Deal. Adanna calculated quickly. There had to be at least 10 million naira in that safe. Half would be enough to start over, to hire lawyers, to disappear completely. She nodded. They worked in tense silence, dividing the money, stuffing it into bags Kemi had brought. The documents revealed a business empire far more complex than Adanna had known. Shell companies, offshore accounts, contracts with government officials. Chidi wasn't just an architect. He was a money launderer. This is bigger than I thought, Kemi muttered, photographing documents with her phone. If this gets out, Half of Lagos's elite will go to prison. Then use it, Adanna said. Destroy him. Kemi looked up, genuine respect flickering in her eyes. You're stronger than I thought. Maybe you should stay and fight. I can't. Adanna zipped the bag of money closed. My children deserve better than growing up watching their mother become a corpse. They were closing the safe when they heard it, the unmistakable sound of Chidi's Range Rover pulling into the driveway. 50 minutes early. Both women's eyes went wide with panic. The window, Kemi hissed. There's a servant's staircase that leads to the kitchen. But it was too late. The front door opened. Chidi's voice boomed through the house, angry and suspicious. Adanna, why is there a strange car in my driveway? And whose BMW is blocking my garage? Comment your thoughts on the betrayal. Should Adanna leave Chidi before it's too late? Share this with someone who loves drama. Kemi moved with the speed of someone who'd planned for this contingency. She shoved the silver phone and documents into her purse, grabbed Adanna's arm, and pulled her toward the office window that overlooked the back garden. Below them, the manicured lawn stretched toward a high wall covered in bougainvillea, beautiful and useless as a barrier. We jump, Kemi whispered urgently. Are you mad? That's a 15-foot drop. And your husband is a 15-foot monster climbing those stairs right now. Choose. Footsteps thundered up the marble staircase. Chidi's voice grew closer, calling for Adanna with that edge of rage she knew too well. In seconds, he would round the corner and find them in his office, his safe open, his secrets exposed. Adanna made her choice. She threw one leg over the windowsill. Mama! The scream came from downstairs, Zainab's voice, high and terrified. Daddy's hurting the driver lady. Everything stopped. Adanna's world narrowed to that single cry, her daughter's fear cutting through every survival instinct. She pulled her leg back inside and ran toward the office door, Kemi's protests fading behind her. She found them in the foyer, Chidi with his hand wrapped around the Camry driver's throat, slamming the older woman against the wall while her children watched in frozen horror. The woman's purple headscarf had come loose, her eyes bulging as she struggled for air. Who sent you? Chidi roared. Who told you to come to my house? Chidi, let her go. Adanna's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. She's just a driver. I called her for groceries. He turned, and the look on his face made her blood run cold. This wasn't his usual anger. This was something worse, fear disguised as rage, the expression of a man watching his carefully constructed world begin to crumble. You're lying. He released the driver, who collapsed to the floor gasping. You're leaving me. You think I'm stupid? I saw her texting. Saw package is ready for pickup on her phone. He started toward Adanna, each step deliberate. Where were you going to go, Adanna? To your sisters? To the police? Did you really think you could just disappear? Behind him, Adanna saw Kemi slipping down the servant's staircase, bag clutched to her chest. Their eyes met for one brief moment, a silent acknowledgement that this alliance of convenience was over. Then Kemi was gone, leaving Adanna alone to face the consequences of their failed heist. I wasn't going anywhere, Adanna lied, her voice steady despite her racing heart. That woman came to the wrong house. The wrong gate code. Mama, don't lie. Emeka's voice was small but defiant. He stepped forward, his 11-year-old frame trembling but resolute. We were packing. We were leaving because you hurt Mama every night and we're scared of you. The silence that followed was deafening. Chidi stared at his son as if seeing him for the first time. Really seeing him, not as an extension of his legacy but as a child who'd witnessed too much, learned too young what cruelty looked like when it wore a father's face. Emeka, Chidi's voice cracked. No. The boy was crying now, years of suppressed fear pouring out. You hit her. You make her cry. You broke her arm last year and said she fell down the stairs, but I saw you, Daddy. I saw you push her. Chidi's mask shattered completely. For one terrible moment, Adanna saw something flicker in his eyes that might have been shame. But it died as quickly as it appeared, replaced by cold calculation. Get upstairs, he said quietly. All of you. Now. Chidi, please. I said get upstairs. His roar shook the chandelier. Zainab started crying, clutching her mother's leg. Adanna had already fled, his small form disappearing around the corner. Even the Camry driver scrambled to her feet and ran toward the door. But as Adanna gathered her children to shepherd them upstairs, Chidi's phone rang. He answered it without looking away from his family. What? No, I left the meeting because... His face went pale. That's impossible. I didn't authorize any. He listened, his expression transforming from shock to fury. 40 million naira? Someone accessed the company account? When? Adanna's stomach dropped. Kemi. She'd used the documents from the safe to access their firm's accounts. She'd stolen the money while Adanna was distracting Chidi. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Chidi ended the call, his eyes finding Adanna with laser focus. Someone robbed our company account. Someone who knew the security protocols, the access codes. He moved closer. Someone who was in my house. In my office. I don't know what you're talking about. His hand shot out and grabbed her jaw, forcing her to meet his eyes. You let someone into my house. Into my office. Who? Nobody. I was just... He released her with a shove and pulled out his phone again, swiping through security camera footage. Adanna's heart sank as she realized he had cameras everywhere. In the hallways, in the foyer, probably even in his office. He would see everything. Kemi's arrival, their conspiracy, the safe being opened. But when Chidi's face twisted in confusion, Adanna realized something was wrong. The cameras are off, he muttered. All of them. Disabled. His eyes snapped to Adanna. You did this. You planned this whole thing. I didn't. Lies. He advanced on her, and this time Adanna saw murder in his eyes. You brought that woman here to rob me. My own wife, stealing from me. After everything I've given you. Everything you've given me? Adanna's voice rose, years of suppressed rage finally breaking free. You've given me bruises. Broken bones. Shame. Fear. You've turned our home into a prison and our children into witnesses to violence. Don't you dare talk about what you've given me. Her words hung in the air like a grenade. Chidi stared at her as if she'd become a stranger. This meek woman who'd never dared talk back suddenly transformed into something he didn't recognize. You're going to regret this, he said softly. Everything you've done today, you're going to wish you'd never tried to leave me. He turned and walked out, leaving Adanna standing in the foyer with her terrified children clinging to her. The front door slammed. The Range Rover roared to life. And as Chidi drove away to deal with his stolen money, Adanna realized with crystal clarity that she'd just made the most dangerous enemy imaginable. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You're welcome for disabling his cameras. Now take your children and run. You have maybe 2 hours before he realizes I'm the one who robbed him. Hey, Kemi. She'd planned this all along. Used Adanna as a distraction while she systematically destroyed Chidi's life. And now they were both on the clock, both racing against a man who would stop at nothing to get his revenge. Adanna looked at her children, at Emika's brave, tearful face, at Zainab's trembling hands, at the empty space where Adanna should be standing. Wait. Where was Adanna? Zainab, where's your brother? Her daughter's eyes went wide with fresh terror. He ran out the back door when Daddy started yelling. He said he was going to get help. 7 years old. Alone. In Lagos. Running from a home that had become a war zone. Adanna's scream of her son's name echoed through the empty mansion as she realized that in trying to save her children, she might have lost one forever. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for the next chapter. What do you think will happen to Adanna? Comment below. The Lagos afternoon sun was merciless as Adanna burst through the back gate, her eyes scanning the crowded street for any sign of her youngest son. The neighborhood, despite its wealth, buzzed with the usual chaos of Victoria Island. Delivery motorcycles weaving through traffic, street vendors balancing impossible loads, generators roaring from every compound. A 7-year-old boy could disappear into this mess in seconds. Adanna. Her voice was raw with panic. Adanna. Emeka and Zainab flanked her, equally terrified. The Camry driver had long since vanished, taking with her Adanna's only guaranteed escape route. Now they were exposed, vulnerable, standing in the street where neighbors could see them, where word would inevitably reach Chidi. "Mama, I see him." Zainab pointed toward the main road where a small figure in a school uniform darted between cars, headed toward the bustling Anakin market district. Adanna's backpack bounced on his shoulders as he ran, his little legs pumping with the desperation of a child fleeing monsters he couldn't understand. Adanna ran, her heart pounding against her ribs. Behind her, she heard car doors slamming, curious neighbors emerging to watch the drama unfold. This was exactly what she'd wanted to avoid. Witnesses, gossip, evidence that would spread through Lagos's elite circles like wildfire. By nightfall, everyone would know that Chidi Okonkwo's wife had lost control of her children in broad daylight. But right now, she didn't care about reputation. She only cared about reaching her son before he ran into traffic or attracted the wrong attention. This was Lagos, a city of 20 million souls where children went missing every day, swallowed by poverty, trafficking networks, or simple cruel chance. She caught up to him at the market entrance, grabbing his arm just as he was about to plunge into the maze of stalls selling everything from plantains to pirated electronics. Adanna struggled in her grip, tears streaming down his face, his small body shaking with sobs. "Let me go. I want to go home. Not our home. Grandma's home in Enugu." Adanna dropped to her knees on the dirty pavement, pulling her son into her arms, not caring about the crowd gathering around them or the market women whispering behind their hands. "I know, baby. I know. We're going to Grandma's. I promise. But you can't run away. You have to stay with Mama. Daddy's going to hurt you again." Adanna wailed. "He's going to break your arm again and you'll cry in the bathroom and think we don't hear, but we do. We always hear." The words were bullets. Each one pierced something in Adanna's chest, the full weight of what her children had endured crashing over her. She'd thought she was protecting them by staying, by trying to keep the family together. But she'd only taught them that love looked like violence, that marriage meant suffering. "Not anymore," she whispered fiercely. "He's never going to hurt me again. We're leaving. Today. Right now." A shadow fell over them. Adanna looked up, expecting a concerned stranger or a nosy neighbor. Instead, she found herself staring at a woman in an expensive navy pantsuit, her salt and pepper locks pulled back in an elegant bun. The woman's eyes were sharp, intelligent, and focused entirely on Adanna. "Mrs. Okonkwo," the woman said, her voice carrying the crisp accent of the Igbo elite. "My name is Chidinma Azakayo. I'm a prosecutor with the Ministry of Justice. And I think you and I need to talk." Adanna's blood turned to ice. A prosecutor. How much had she seen? How much did she know? "I'm sorry, I don't." "I've been investigating your husband for 8 months, Chidinma interrupted, her voice low enough that only Adanna could hear. "Financial crimes, money laundering, conspiracy with government officials. I have evidence that could put him away for 20 years. But I need a witness. Someone from inside his life. Someone brave enough to testify." The marketplace sounds faded to white noise. Adanna held her son tighter, her mind racing. This was impossible. Too convenient. How could a prosecutor just happen to be here, at this exact moment, on the exact day Adanna tried to escape? "This is a trap," Adanna said quietly. "You work for Chidi. He sent you to scare me." Chidinma's laugh was bitter. "If I worked for your husband, Mrs. Okonkwo, you'd already be dead. The men he's involved with don't play games." She pulled out a business card, pressing it into Adanna's palm. "I've been following you for weeks. I know about the beatings. I know about today's attempted escape. And I know about Kemi Adelik's theft of 40 million naira from your husband's company account." Adanna's head snapped up. "How?" "Because I've been watching Kemi, too. She's been my confidential informant for 6 months, feeding me information about Chidi's illegal dealings in exchange for immunity from prosecution. But she went rogue today. Stole money she wasn't authorized to touch. Now both of you are in danger. The pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. Kemi hadn't just been Chidi's mistress and business partner. She'd been working with prosecutors, setting him up for a fall. And Adanna had walked right into the middle of their operation. Why are you telling me this? Adanna's voice was barely audible. Because Kemi's cover is blown. She can't testify now. She's a thief and a conspirator. But you can. Chidinma crouched down to eye level. You know where he keeps documents. You have access to his home, his computers, his secrets. Help me build an airtight case against him, and I'll make sure you and your children are protected. Witness protection, new identities, relocation to anywhere in Nigeria or abroad. You'll never have to see him again. Adanna's mind spun. Testify against Chidi? Become a witness in a federal investigation? The woman who'd spent 12 years trying to be invisible, suddenly thrust into the spotlight of a criminal trial? And if I refuse? Chidinma's expression hardened. Then I can't protect you from what's coming. Chidi will find out about Kemi's betrayal within hours. He'll realize someone helped her access his safe. And when he does, he'll come for you with everything he has. You think the beatings were bad before? Wait until he thinks you've stolen 40 million naira from him. Obinna squirmed in Adanna's arms, and she loosened her grip, letting him breathe. Emeka and Zainab stood nearby, watching the exchange with wide eyes, too young to understand the implications but old enough to sense the danger. I need time to think. You have no time. Chidinma's voice rose, then dropped again as people glanced their way. Chidi is at his office right now, reviewing security footage, questioning employees, calling in favors with police commissioners. In maybe 3 hours, he'll have pieced together what happened. You need to decide right now. Do you want to be his victim forever, or do you want to be the woman who brings him down? It was a seductive offer. Justice. Revenge. Freedom. Everything Adanna had dreamed about during those long nights nursing her bruises and swallowing her screams. But it was also terrifying. Testifying meant going public with her shame, admitting to the world that she'd stayed with an abuser, allowed her children to witness violence. What exactly would I have to do? Chidinma's eyes gleamed with something that might have been respect or might have been calculation. First, we get you and your children somewhere safe. Then, you tell me everything. Where Chidi keeps his records, his passwords, his contacts. We build a case brick by brick until it's so solid he can't wriggle free. She paused. And when the time comes, you stand in court and tell the truth about what he did to you. No more hiding. No more silence. Adanna looked at her children. At Obinna's tear-stained face. At Emeka's clenched fists. At Zainab's trembling lower lip. They deserved better than a mother who ran and hid. They deserved to see that monsters could be defeated, that justice was possible. But before she could answer, her phone exploded with notifications. Text messages, missed calls, all from the same number, Chidi's phone. She opened the messages with shaking hands. You stole from me. You let that whore into my house. You turned my own son against me. You're going to pay for this, Adanna. You and whoever helped you. I'm coming home. And when I get there, you better pray I'm in a forgiving mood. The final message was a photo, a screenshot from a camera Adanna hadn't known existed. It showed her and Kemi in Chidi's office, the safe open between them, money visible in the frame. Somehow, despite Kemi's confidence about disabling the cameras, Chidi had a backup system. He had proof. He knows, Adanna whispered. He has evidence. He's going to say I was part of the theft. Chidinma snatched the phone, her expression darkening as she scrolled through the messages. This is a threat. Explicit, documented threat. This is good for us. It shows intent to harm. She looked up. But it also means we're out of time. He's probably 15 minutes from your house right now. Then I'll go somewhere else. Take my children and what? Run. With no money, no plan, and a husband who has connections to half the police force in Lagos. Chidinma shook her head. The only way you survive this is if you come with me. Right now. Let me protect you. It was the moment of choice. The crossroads. Adanna could feel the weight of it pressing down on her shoulders. 12 years of marriage, 3 children, a life built on shifting sand. Behind her was everything she knew, everything familiar. Ahead was chaos, uncertainty, danger. But also, possibly, freedom. "If I do this," Adanna said slowly, "if I testify against him, will you make sure my children never have to see him again? Never have to be afraid of him? I'll make sure he spends the rest of his life in Kirikiri maximum security prison," Chidinma said flatly, "where the only people he can hurt are other criminals." Adanna nodded once, decisively. "Then let's go." They moved quickly through the market, Chidinma leading them toward a nondescript black sedan parked on a side street. The prosecutor moved with the efficiency of someone who'd extracted witnesses from dangerous situations before, her eyes constantly scanning for threats. She bundled Adanna's children into the back seat, then turned to help Adanna. And froze. Across the street, partially hidden by a roadside food vendor's stall, stood Kemi Adelik. She was disheveled now, her perfect makeup smeared, her designer outfit rumpled. And she was on her phone, her eyes locked on Adanna with an expression of absolute fury. "She's calling him," Chidinma breathed. "She's calling Chidi right now, telling him where you are." "Why would she?" "Because she just realized you're working with me. Which means her immunity deal is worthless. If you testify about what you saw in that office, Kemi goes to prison too." Chidinma shoved Adanna toward the car. "Get in. Now." But it was too late. The roar of an engine cut through the market noise, a black Range Rover, speeding toward them with complete disregard for traffic or pedestrians. Through the windshield, Adanna could see Chidi's face, twisted with rage, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. He'd found them. And he was coming fast. Will Adanna escape Chidi's wrath? What will happen when he catches up to them? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. The Range Rover mounted the curb with a sickening crunch of metal against concrete, scattering market vendors and shoppers in every direction. Chidinma moved with trained precision, pushing Adanna into the sedan's driver's seat while she ran around to the passenger side. "Drive. Go." But Adanna's hands were shaking too badly to find the ignition. Behind them, Chidi's door slammed open. Through the rearview mirror, she watched her husband emerge from the Range Rover like something from a nightmare, his expensive suit torn, his face contorted with an emotion beyond rage. This was a man who'd lost control of everything he'd built, and now he wanted blood. "Mama, he's coming." Zainab's scream from the back seat finally jolted Adanna into action. Her fingers found the keys, Chidinma had left them in the ignition, and the engine roared to life. She slammed the gear into drive and pressed the accelerator just as Chidi reached for her door handle. The sedan lurched forward, clipping a roadside plantain stand and sending fruit flying across the street. Adanna had never driven like this, aggressively, recklessly, with complete disregard for traffic laws or safety. But Chidi had taught her what real danger looked like, and compared to 12 years of domestic violence, driving through a Lagos market seemed almost simple. "Turn left at the next junction." Chidinma barked, one hand braced against the dashboard, the other already dialing her phone. "I'm calling for backup, but we need to get you out of Victoria Island. Head toward the mainland." Behind them, the Range Rover gave chase, its powerful engine easily matching their sedan's speed. Chidi drove like a man possessed, sideswiping vehicles without hesitation, his horn blaring constantly. In the back seat, the children were crying, clinging to each other as their mother transformed from victim to survivor in real time. "He's going to kill us," Adanna heard herself say, her voice strangely calm despite the terror coursing through her veins. "Not if I can help it." Chidinma finished her call and pulled something from her jacket, a compact pistol. "I'm licensed to carry. If he tries to force us off the road, I'll shoot out his tires." The casual mention of violence, of a prosecutor willing to fire a weapon in broad daylight, somehow grounded Adanna in the surreal reality of her situation. This wasn't a melodrama or a nightmare. This was her life now, careening through Lagos traffic while her abusive husband pursued them like prey. They burst onto the third mainland bridge, the longest bridge in Africa, stretching 11 kilometers across the Lagos Lagoon. The bridge was packed with rush-hour traffic, a chaotic river of danfos, trucks, private cars, and motorcycles all jockeying for position. Normally, Adanna would have been terrified of this crossing. Today, it felt like freedom. Open space. No walls closing in. But Chidi was gaining. "Can't this thing go faster?" Adanna demanded, weaving between a bus and a truck carrying furniture. "Not without an accident." Chidinma craned her neck to watch the Range Rover closing the distance. "But I have an idea. See that police checkpoint ahead?" Every Lagos driver knew the bridge checkpoints, extortion points where traffic officers collected bribes in exchange for safe passage. Adanna had paid them dozens of times, handing over crumpled naira notes to men in ill-fitting uniforms. Now, Chidinma was suggesting they drive straight toward them. "They'll stop us." "Exactly. And when they do, I'll identify myself as a federal prosecutor. I'll tell them the man behind us is a wanted criminal fleeing arrest. They'll have to intervene." It was a gamble. Police in Lagos were notoriously corrupt, and Chidi had connections everywhere. But what choice did they have? The Range Rover was now close enough that Adanna could see her husband's face in the mirror, could see the cold calculation replacing the rage. He was planning something. The checkpoint loomed ahead, 4 officers in dark blue uniforms, a portable barrier across 2 lanes, and a small wooden booth where they collected their daily take. Adanna pressed the horn, flashing her lights, driving with the frantic energy of someone fleeing danger. The officers noticed, their postures shifting from bored to alert. "Federal prosecutor." Chidinma was already leaning out the window, her identification held high. "The vehicle behind us is in pursuit of a protected witness. I need immediate assistance." For one terrible moment, nothing happened. The officers simply stared, trying to process this deviation from their usual routine. Then one of them, a sergeant with 3 stripes on his arm, stepped forward and raised his hand, signaling for both vehicles to stop. Adanna hit the brakes. The sedan screeched to a halt inches from the barrier. Behind them, Chidi's Range Rover also stopped, but his engine kept running, revving ominously. "Stay in the car," Chidinma ordered, already opening her door. "Let me handle this." But as the prosecutor stepped out to speak with the sergeant, Adanna watched a terrible transaction unfold in her rearview mirror. Chidi had emerged from the Range Rover, his hands spread in a placating gesture, his mouth moving rapidly. He was explaining something to the junior officers who'd approached him. And then, Adanna's heart sank. She saw him pull out his wallet. Money changed hands. Lots of it. More than these officers probably made in a month. The sergeant who'd been listening to Chidinma suddenly stiffened. He said something to her that made her face drain of color. Then he turned and walked toward Adanna's car with 3 other officers. "Step out of the vehicle, madam," the sergeant said, his earlier alertness replaced by cold officiousness. "You and the children." "No!" Adanna's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "I'm a witness under federal protection." "You are a thief," the sergeant interrupted. "Mr. Okonkwo has reported that you stole 40 million naira from his company account. He has evidence. We are placing you under arrest." Everything slowed down. Adanna watched Chidinma arguing furiously with the officers, watched her reach for her phone only to have it knocked from her hand. Watched Chidi approach the sedan with a smile that had nothing to do with happiness and everything to do with victory. He'd won. Again. Just like he always won. Money, connections, and power had trumped justice before it even had a chance to begin. "Mama!" Emeka's voice was small from the back seat. "What's happening?" Adanna looked at her children in the mirror, 3 faces that trusted her absolutely, believed she could protect them from anything. And in that moment, something inside her snapped. Not broke. Snapped into place. Clarity replacing panic. She couldn't fight Chidi with money. She couldn't fight him with connections. But she had something he'd never counted on. She had nothing left to lose. "Hold on tight," she told her children. Then she slammed the car into reverse. The sedan shot backward, crashing into the Range Rover with enough force to crumple its hood. Chidi dove out of the way, his polished shoes slipping on the bridge's surface. The police officers scattered, shouting. And Adanna shifted into drive, yanked the steering wheel hard right, and punched through the wooden checkpoint barrier like it was made of paper. Are you insane? Chidinma had somehow managed to dive back into the car during the chaos, her voice pitched high with adrenaline. Probably, Adanna said, and pressed the accelerator to the floor. They rocketed down the bridge, leaving behind twisted metal, shouting police officers, and Chidi scrambling to his damaged Range Rover. But Adanna knew this reprieve was temporary. She'd just assaulted police officers and destroyed government property. She'd gone from potential witness to actual criminal in the span of 30 seconds. "Where do we go now?" she asked Chidinma, her hands still shaking on the wheel. The prosecutor was already on her backup phone, barking orders to someone on the other end. When she finished, she turned to Adanna with an expression that mixed admiration and terror. "We go underground. I have a safe house in Ikeja. But Adanna, what you just did. There's no going back now. You're committed. All the way to the end." "Good," Adanna said, and meant it. "I'm tired of being afraid." Behind them, through the dissipating chaos of the checkpoint, a damaged Range Rover roared back to life. Chidi wasn't done. He would never be done. Not until one of them was destroyed completely. The war had begun. If you're loving this story, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Comment below what you think Adanna should do next. The safe house in Ikeja was nothing like the Victoria Island mansion Adanna had fled. It was a modest flat on the 4th floor of a nondescript building, wedged between a church that blasted gospel music at deafening volumes and a generator repair shop that provided the building's only reliable electricity. The walls were thin, the furniture sparse, and the bathroom had no hot water. To Adanna, it felt like paradise. "This is where you'll stay until we can arrange proper witness protection," Chidinma explained, locking the door behind them with 3 separate deadbolts. "Nobody knows about this place except my most trusted colleagues. Not even my boss at the ministry." Adanna settled her exhausted children onto the single bed, their school uniforms now wrinkled and stained from the day's chaos. Obinna had fallen asleep in the car, his small body finally surrendering to exhaustion. Zainab and Emeka huddled together, whispering to each other with the intensity of children trying to make sense of a world that had shattered around them. "How long?" Adanna asked quietly. "How long before this is over?" Chidinma's expression was grim as she pulled out her laptop and several files. "That depends entirely on how much you can give me. Chidi's lawyers are probably already working on getting that checkpoint incident classified as attempted murder. You rammed a police barrier, Adanna. In Lagos, that's a death sentence if you don't have powerful friends protecting you." The weight of what she'd done, what she'd become, settled over Adanna like a heavy blanket. This morning, she'd been a battered wife planning a quiet escape. Now she was a fugitive, a witness, possibly a criminal herself. Everything had spiraled so far beyond her control. "Tell me what you need," she said. They worked through the night. Adanna drew diagrams of the Victoria Island mansion, marking every room where Chidi kept documents. She provided passwords she'd memorized from watching him type on his laptop, her birthday, their children's names, his mother's maiden name combined with random numbers. She described the contents of his safe in meticulous detail, not just the money and documents Kemi had stolen, but the flash drive she'd seen, the second passport, the photographs. Photographs. Chidinma's head snapped up. What kind of photographs? Adanna's voice dropped to a whisper, mindful of her sleeping children. Pictures of women. Bruised. Beaten. Some I recognized from social events. Wives of business associates, a banker's daughter, even a senator's cousin. She paused. Kemi told me he kept them as insurance. Or trophies. I don't know which is worse. Chidinma's jaw tightened. He's a serial abuser. This isn't just about you, Adanna. There are other victims. Maybe dozens. She started typing furiously. If we can get those photographs, we can build a pattern of behavior case. Multiple victims. Multiple assaults. The federal prosecutor would have to take notice. But they're in his safe. And after today, there's no way we're getting back into that house. We don't need to. Chidinma pulled up security camera footage on her laptop, not from the mansion, but from outside it. I've had surveillance on your house for months. Look at this. The footage showed Chidi returning home just 2 hours ago, his Range Rover limping through the gates with its damaged front end. But he wasn't alone. 2 other vehicles followed him, a white Lexus and a black Mercedes. Men in expensive suits emerged, along with 2 uniformed police officers. Friends in high places, Chidinma muttered. Probably reviewing the checkpoint incident, planning how to spin it. But look, she fast-forwarded the footage. They're bringing out boxes. Lots of them. From his office. Adanna leaned closer. Indeed, the men were loading document boxes into the vehicles, moving with the urgency of people destroying evidence. Chidi was cleaning house, erasing anything that could connect him to illegal activities. The flash drives, Adanna breathed. He's moving everything. If we don't act now, he'll bury it so deep we'll never find it. Yes. Chidinma closed the laptop and looked directly at Adanna. I need you to call him. What? Are you insane? I need you to arrange a meeting. Public place, lots of witnesses. Tell him you want to negotiate, that you'll return to him quietly if he drops the theft charges against you. Appeal to his ego. Make him think he's won. Adanna's stomach churned. And then we wire you with a recording device. You get him talking about the money laundering, the violence, anything incriminating. Just 15 minutes of conversation is all I need to get a warrant to seize everything he owns. The plan was audacious and terrifying. It meant facing Chidi again, sitting across from the man who'd broken her bones and spirit, pretending to surrender while secretly building his cage. What if he realizes I'm recording? What if he gets violent? That's why we choose a public place. A restaurant, a hotel lobby, somewhere with security. I'll have undercover officers positioned at every exit. If he so much as raises his voice, we extract you. Chidinma's eyes were intense. But Adanna, I won't lie to you. This is dangerous. If something goes wrong, I'll do it. The words came out before Adanna could second-guess herself. She thought about those other women in the photographs, their bruised faces and haunted eyes. Women who'd probably stayed silent like she had, who'd covered their shame and accepted their fate. If she could speak for them, expose Chidi for what he truly was, then maybe her 12 years of suffering would mean something. When? She asked. Tomorrow afternoon. We'll set it up for a restaurant in Lekki, neutral territory, very public. I'll brief you on what questions to ask, what topics to pursue. Chidinma reached across the table and squeezed Adanna's hand. You're braver than you know. But as Adanna tried to sleep that night, curled on the floor beside her children's bed because there was nowhere else to lie down, she didn't feel brave. She felt terrified. Because she knew Chidi better than anyone. She knew he never truly lost. He adapted, manipulated, found new angles of attack. And something about this plan, about the ease with which Chidinma had suggested it, felt wrong. Too simple. Too convenient. Her phone buzzed at 3 a.m., jolting her from restless half-sleep. An unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something made her open the message. It was a video file. Her hands shook as she pressed play, turning the volume down low so as not to wake the children. The video showed the interior of a car, a red BMW. Kemi Adelik was in the driver's seat, her face illuminated by the dashboard glow. But she wasn't alone. Next to her sat a man Adanna recognized from society pages and business magazines. Senator Okoro, one of the most powerful politicians in Lagos. Told you we should have killed her months ago, Kemi was saying. Now she's with that prosecutor, and everything's going to unravel. Calm down. The senator's voice was smooth, unconcerned. Chidinma Azakai is ambitious, but she's not stupid. She knows better than to cross us. Us? There is no us anymore. Chidi knows about the money, knows I'm the one who stole it. And when he finds out you and I have been working together, he won't find out. Because tomorrow, when his wife meets with him, we'll make sure she never testifies. An unfortunate accident. Very tragic. And Chidi will be so consumed with grief that he won't notice when we liquidate his assets and disappear." Kemi laughed bitterly. "You really think you can kill her in a public restaurant?" "I think," Senator Okoro said slowly, "that food poisoning happens all the time in Lagos. Especially in restaurants with health code violations. Which is why I've already paid off the chef at the location Chidinma selected." The video ended. Adanna sat frozen, her mind struggling to process what she'd just seen. Chidinma's plan wasn't to protect her. It was to serve her up as a sacrifice. The prosecutor was either compromised or working directly with the same people who'd been enabling Chidi's crimes all along. Another message appeared. Senator Okoro has been laundering money through Chidi's firm for 5 years. Chidinma is his niece. They needed someone to take the fall for the missing money. That someone was always going to be you. Trust no one. A friend. Who had sent this? Kemi. Another rival? It didn't matter. What mattered was that Adanna had jumped from one trap directly into another. She'd trusted a prosecutor who was just as corrupt as her husband. She'd thought she was taking control of her life, but she'd only traded one abuser for a more sophisticated one. She looked at her children, sleeping peacefully despite the chaos, still trusting that their mother would protect them. And Adanna realized with crystal clarity that there was only one person she could truly rely on, herself. By morning, when Chidinma woke and began preparing for the restaurant meeting, Adanna was ready. She nodded along with the prosecutor's instructions, accepted the hidden recording device, rehearsed her lines. But in her pocket was her phone, fully charged, with video evidence of the conspiracy to kill her. She wouldn't be anyone's pawn. Not Chidi's. Not Chidinma's. Not Senator Okoro's. If they wanted to play games with her life, she would burn their entire operation to the ground. And she knew exactly how to start. What would you do in Adanna's position? Comment below. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. The restaurant Chidinma had chosen was called The Terrace, an upscale establishment in Lekki Phase 1, known for its expensive seafood and clientele of Lagos's upper crust. Adanna arrived at 2 p.m. exactly, wearing a simple blue dress borrowed from Chidinma's emergency wardrobe and carrying a purse that contained not just the prosecutor's recording device, but her own phone set to livestream directly to social media. If they were going to kill her, the whole world would watch. Chidi was already seated at a corner table, his posture relaxed, his smile confident. He'd changed into a fresh agbada, pristine white with gold embroidery, and wore his best watch. To anyone observing, he looked like a successful businessman meeting his wife for a reconciliation lunch. Only Adanna could see the rage simmering behind his eyes, the tension in his jaw that meant violence was never far from the surface. Adanna. He stood as she approached, even pulled out her chair like a gentleman. You look well. Considering I've been on the run for 24 hours? She sat, her hands folded carefully in her lap to hide their trembling. Considering you tried to run me off the third mainland bridge? Yes, Chidi. I'm doing wonderfully. His smile didn't waver, but his voice dropped to a lethal whisper. You stole from me. You and that whore Kemi. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? I didn't steal anything. Kemi acted alone. Lies. He leaned back as a waiter approached with menus. Chidi ordered for both of them without asking her preference. Grilled fish, jollof rice, plantains. The same meal he always ordered when they ate out, as if the past 12 years hadn't taught him anything about her tastes. Or perhaps because he'd never cared to learn. The waiter departed, and Chidi's mask slipped further. I want the money back, Adanna. All of it. And I want the names of everyone who helped you plan this little rebellion. Or what? You'll beat me again? In front of all these people. I'll take my children. His voice was silk over steel. I have 10 witnesses who'll testify that you're an unfit mother. That you kidnapped my children, stole from my company, assaulted police officers. A judge will give me full custody, and you'll be lucky if you see them once a year under supervised conditions. It was exactly the threat she'd expected. The one that had kept her trapped for years. Fear for her children, fear of losing them to Chidi's wealth and connections. But something had shifted in Adanna during the past 24 hours. Fear had burned away, leaving only cold determination. "You won't take my children," she said quietly. "Because by the time this lunch is over, you're going to be under arrest." Chidi's laugh was genuine, amused. "Really? And what fantasy have you constructed where that happens?" "The one where I'm recording this conversation." She touched her purse lightly. "Where every threat you just made is being documented by federal prosecutors. Where the evidence I provided about your money laundering operation is already being reviewed by authorities you can't bribe." For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Chidi's face. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Adanna leaned forward. "Tell me about Senator Okoro, Chidi. Tell me about the shell companies in the Cayman Islands. Tell me about the government contracts you won by funneling kickbacks through your architectural firm. Tell me about all of it, and let's see who ends up in prison." The waiter returned with their food, oblivious to the tension crackling between them. Adanna watched Chidi's plate carefully, remembering Senator Okoro's casual mention of food poisoning. The fish looked perfectly prepared, the rice aromatic with spices. But she didn't touch her plate. "You're not eating," Chidi observed. "I'm not hungry." "Eat." It was a command, not a suggestion. "You always loved jollof rice. Remember? I ordered it on our first date, at that little restaurant in Surulere. Before you became too good for such simple places." The memory was a knife. Their first date had been beautiful. Chidi charming and attentive, talking about his dreams of building beautiful structures across Africa. She'd fallen in love with that version of him, the idealist with kind eyes. When had he transformed into this monster? Or had the monster always been there, just waiting for the right moment to emerge? "I'm not eating poisoned food, Chidi." His eyes widened, genuine shock this time. "What are you talking about?" "Your partners. Senator Okoro, Kemi, whoever else you're involved with. They plan to kill me here. Make it look like food poisoning. Eliminate the witness before she can testify." Adanna pulled out her phone, showing him the video she'd received. "I know everything. About the conspiracy, about Chidinma being compromised, about all of it." Chidi watched the video, his expression transforming from shock to fury to something that might have been fear. "That's impossible. Kemi wouldn't." He stopped, realization dawning. "You're saying she's working with Okoro against me?" "I'm saying everyone's working against everyone. This isn't about marriage anymore, Chidi. This is about a criminal enterprise that's falling apart. And I'm the one person who can expose all of it." For a long moment, they sat in silence. Around them, the restaurant buzzed with normal life. Couples sharing meals, business associates negotiating deals, waiters gliding between tables. None of them knew they were sitting meters away from a marriage exploding into something far more dangerous. "What do you want?" Chidi finally asked, his voice hollow. "I want you to confess. Everything. On record. I want you to admit to the money laundering, the violence, the conspiracy. I want you to implicate everyone involved. Okoro, Kemi, your police contacts, all of them." "In exchange for what?" "In exchange for me ensuring your children don't grow up thinking their father was just a monster. Do this, and I'll tell them you tried to make things right at the end. Refuse, and I'll make sure they know every detail of what you did to me. Every bruise. Every broken bone. Every night I cried myself to sleep." It was the cruelest weapon she had, Chidi's own legacy, the one thing his ego couldn't bear to see destroyed. She watched him struggle with it, pride warring with pragmatism. "You're recording this conversation right now," he said slowly. "Which means anything I say can be used against me." "Yes. So if I admit to everything, I go to prison for decades. My reputation destroyed, my firm liquidated, my name synonymous with corruption and violence." "Yes. And if I refuse?" Adanna pressed a button on her phone. "Then this goes live. Right now. To every social media platform, every news outlet, every gossip blog in Nigeria. By tonight, you'll be more famous than you ever dreamed. Just not the way you wanted." She showed him the screen, Her livestream already had 50,000 viewers and climbing. People were watching in real time, listening to every word. The restaurant, the conversation, Chidi's threats, all of it was being broadcast to the world. Chidi's face drained of color. You didn't. I did. Because I finally understood that the only power you have over me is secrecy. Shame. The expectation that I'll stay quiet to protect the family reputation. But I don't care about reputation anymore, Chidi. I care about survival. You've destroyed us both, he whispered. No. I've destroyed you. I'm going to survive. That's when the restaurant doors burst open. But it wasn't police officers who entered. It was Senator Okoro himself, flanked by 4 men in suits with bulges under their jackets that suggested guns. Behind them came Kemi Adelik, her face pale but determined. And behind them all, Chidinma Azakayo, the prosecutor who was supposed to be protecting Adanna, now moving with the easy confidence of someone who'd planned this moment all along. They'd all arrived to clean up their mess, to silence the witness who knew too much, to ensure their conspiracy stayed buried. But they'd miscalculated one crucial detail. You're all on camera, Adanna said calmly, raising her phone so they could all see the live stream. 10 million people watching now. 20 million. Every second you stand there, every word you say, is being recorded and broadcast. So tell me, are you really prepared to commit murder in front of half of Nigeria? The standoff was absolute. Senator Okoro stood frozen, his career hanging by a thread. Kemi looked between Adanna and Chidi, calculating her options. Chidinma's face was ashen, her entire operation exposed. And Chidi sat perfectly still, staring at his wife as if seeing her for the first time. When did you become this person? He asked softly. Adanna smiled, and it was the saddest smile in the world. The day you first hit me. You just never noticed because you were too busy trying to break me to realize I was learning how to be unbreakable. What will happen next? Will Adanna make it out alive? Comment below and don't forget to like and subscribe. The restaurant had gone completely silent. Every patron, every waiter, every person within line of sight had their phones out now, recording the standoff. Senator Okoro was the first to break, his political instincts overriding his criminal ones. He raised his hands in a placating gesture, his voice pitched loud enough for all the cameras to hear. Mrs. Okonkwo, I think there's been a terrible misunderstanding. I came here today as a concerned friend of your husband's, hoping to mediate. Save it. Adanna kept her phone steady, the live stream counter climbing past 30 million viewers. Everyone watching just saw you walk in with armed men. They heard you on that video talking about killing me. Your career is over, Senator. The only question now is whether you want to add more charges by doing something stupid. One of the senator's security guards reached inside his jacket. Immediately, chaos erupted. Diners screamed and dove under tables. Waiters scattered. But before the guard could draw his weapon, the restaurant's front windows shattered inward as Lagos State Police SWAT officers poured through, assault rifles raised, voices shouting commands in Yoruba and English. Everybody down. Hands where we can see them. Adanna dropped to the floor, protecting her phone and its live stream with her body. Through the chaos, she watched Senator Okoro's guards being disarmed and forced to the ground. Watched Kemi try to slip out the back only to be tackled by 2 female officers. Watched Chidinma pull out her prosecutor's identification, screaming about jurisdiction and authority, only to have it slapped from her hands. And Chidi, her husband of 12 years, the father of her children, the man who'd broken her bones and spirit, simply sat at their table with his hands folded, watching his world collapse with an expression of resigned acceptance. Mrs. Adanna Okonkwo. The SWAT team leader approached her, his face visible through his helmet's visor. Are you injured? No. But I have evidence. Video, audio recordings, documents, everything you need to arrest everyone in this room. We know. We've been monitoring your live stream. He helped her to her feet, his voice dropping to something almost gentle. That was either the bravest or most foolish thing I've ever seen a civilian do. Maybe both. Who sent you? Adanna looked around at the tactical team, the expensive equipment, the professional coordination. This wasn't a routine police response to a disturbance. This was planned. Inspector General Amadi sent us. He's been investigating Senator Okoro's corruption network for 2 years. When your live stream went viral and he saw Okoro walking into that restaurant, he mobilized every available unit. The team leader smiled slightly. You just became the most important witness in the biggest corruption case in Nigerian history. The words should have felt like victory. Instead, Adanna felt only exhaustion. She'd won the battle, but the war was far from over. These people, Chidi, Okoro, Chidinma, Kemi, were connected to networks of power that stretched throughout Lagos, throughout Nigeria. Arresting them was one thing. Making the charges stick was another entirely. I want to see my children, she said. Before anything else, I need to know they're safe. They're at the Ikeja safe house with a protection detail. We secured them the moment your live stream started showing concerning content. He gestured toward the door. We can take you there now, but first I need to say something. Adanna pulled away from him and walked toward Chidi, who was now being handcuffed by 2 officers. Her husband looked up at her, and for a brief moment, she saw something that might have been regret in his eyes. Was any of it real? She asked quietly, away from the cameras and microphones. Our marriage. The early years. Did you ever actually love me? Chidi's face twisted with an emotion she couldn't read. I loved the idea of you. The perfect wife, the perfect family, the perfect image. But the real you. He shook his head. I never let myself know the real you. Because then I would have had to admit I didn't deserve you. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't redemption. But it was perhaps the only honest thing he'd said to her in years. Our children will grow up knowing you were a coward, Adanna said. Not because you were violent, but because when you had a chance to be better, you chose to be worse. She turned away before he could respond, before the small, broken part of her that had once loved him could weaken her resolve. The SWAT team escorted her out through a phalanx of journalists and cameramen who descended on the restaurant like locusts. Questions flew at her from every direction. Mrs. Okonkwo, how long did the abuse last? Are you pressing charges against all of them? What message do you have for other women in abusive marriages? Adanna stopped at the police van's door and turned to face the cameras. Her live stream was still running, still broadcasting to millions. This was her moment, not just to speak for herself, but for every woman who'd suffered in silence, who'd believed the lies that abuse was private, that family shame mattered more than survival. My message, she said clearly, is that you are not alone. I stayed in an abusive marriage for 12 years because I was ashamed. Because I thought leaving would destroy my children. Because powerful people convinced me that my husband's reputation mattered more than my life. She paused, letting her words sink in. They were wrong. And if you're watching this from a home where someone hurts you, know this, leaving is not weakness. Surviving is not selfish. And speaking the truth is not betrayal, it's freedom. The van door closed, cutting off the questions and camera flashes. As they drove through Lagos traffic toward her children, Adanna watched the city she'd lived in for 15 years roll past the windows. It looked different now. Not because the city had changed, but because she had. Her phone buzzed with notifications. Thousands of them. Messages of support, interview requests, threats from Chidi's supporters, praise from women's rights organizations. She ignored them all except one. A text from her sister Ngozi in Abuja. I'm watching. I'm proud of you. The children are asking when you're coming home. I told them their mother is a superhero. Adanna smiled through her tears. She didn't know where that was anymore. The Victoria Island mansion was a crime scene now. The Ikeja safe house was temporary. Enugu, where her mother lived, seemed impossibly far away. But maybe home wasn't a place. Maybe it was the moment you stopped running and started fighting. The moment you chose yourself over everyone else's comfort. The moment you looked at your children and showed them what strength really looked like. The van pulled up to the safe house. Adanna could see Zainab's face pressed against a 4th-floor window, scanning the street for her mother. When their eyes met, The little girl's face lit up with pure joy and relief. That was home. Right there. That smile. Adanna climbed the stairs 2 at a time, burst through the door, and gathered all 3 of her children into her arms. They clung to her like she'd been gone for years instead of hours, their small bodies shaking with relief and residual fear. "Is Daddy going to hurt you again?" Adanna asked into her shoulder. "No, baby. Never again." "Is he going to jail?" Emeka's voice was careful, still trying to protect his father despite everything. "Yes. For a very long time." "Good," Zainab said fiercely, and Adanna's heart broke a little at hearing such hardness in her 9-year-old daughter's voice. But maybe hardness wasn't always a bad thing. Maybe it was necessary for survival. They spent the evening in the cramped safe house, eating rice and stew that a kind officer had brought, watching cartoons on a small television, pretending that life was normal. But outside, the city was transforming. Adanna's livestream had sparked something, a national conversation about domestic violence, about corruption, about the ways powerful men protected each other while destroying the women around them. By nightfall, protests had erupted outside Senator Okoro's house. Women's groups held candlelight vigils. Social media exploded with #IStandWithAdanna trending worldwide. International news organizations picked up the story. Nigerian woman exposes corruption network live on social media. Adanna watched it all unfold on her phone, feeling disconnected from the woman at the center of this storm. That woman, the one who'd live-streamed her confrontation with her abuser, who'd stared down a senator and his guns without flinching, seemed like a stranger. Some braver, stronger version of herself. "Mama!" Zainab climbed into her lap, her small fingers tracing the fading bruise on Adanna's cheek. "Are you scared?" "Terrified," Adanna admitted. "But being scared doesn't mean we stop fighting. It just means we're brave enough to be afraid and keep going anyway." "Like superheroes?" "Like superheroes." But as her children drifted off to sleep and Lagos settled into its restless night, Adanna's phone buzzed with one final message. Unknown number. Despite her exhaustion, despite knowing she should ignore it, she opened the text. "You think you've won. You think exposing us means you're safe. But you've made enemies in places you can't even imagine. People who don't care about live streams or public opinion. People who make problems disappear permanently. Watch your back, Mrs. Okonkwo. This isn't over." The message deleted itself 3 seconds after she read it, leaving no trace. Adanna looked at her sleeping children, at the armed officer stationed outside their door, at the window overlooking a city of 20 million souls where anything could happen. She'd survived Chidi. She'd exposed a corruption network. She'd become a symbol of resistance. But symbols made excellent targets. And somewhere in Lagos's shadows, new threats were already forming, waiting for their moment to strike. The nightmare was far from over. In many ways, it was just beginning. What dangers await Adanna next? Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications for the final chapter. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. 3 months later, Adanna stood in Federal High Court Lagos, her hand raised, swearing to tell the truth before God and the nation. The courtroom was packed beyond capacity. Journalists crammed into every available space, women's rights activists wearing T-shirts with her face printed on them, and a sea of cameras documenting every moment for history. In the defendant's section sat Chidi Okonkwo, Senator Okoro, Chidinma Azakayo, and Kemi Adeleke. For people who'd shaped her nightmare, now reduced to defendants in matching prison uniforms, their power stripped away by evidence and public outrage. Mrs. Okonkwo, the lead prosecutor, began, a woman named Adiz Nwosu who'd taken over the case after Chidinma's arrest. "Please tell the court, in your own words, about the night of September 27th when you first attempted to leave your husband." Adanna had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times. She'd practiced in front of mirrors, with therapists, with lawyers. But nothing could truly prepare her for the weight of speaking her truth in front of hundreds of witnesses, knowing her words would be broadcast across Nigeria and beyond. She told them everything. The years of abuse, the broken bones, the fear that had become as familiar as breathing. She described finding Kemi in her home, the conspiracy she'd uncovered, the chase across the third mainland bridge. She spoke clearly, steadily, refusing to let tears or anger blur her testimony. And when you live-streamed your confrontation at the terrace restaurant, Prosecutor Nwosu asked, "What was your intention?" "Survival," Adanna said simply. "I knew they planned to kill me. The only weapon I had was exposure. I gambled that even powerful people couldn't commit murder in front of 30 million witnesses." "You gambled with your life." "I gambled that my life was worth saving. For 12 years, I didn't believe that. But my children deserved a mother who fought back." The courtroom was absolutely silent. Even the journalists had stopped typing, every eye fixed on Adanna. "Let the record show," Prosecutor Nwosu said, "that Mrs. Okonkwo's livestream led to the exposure of a corruption network that included 3 senators, 5 police commissioners, and 12 government contractors. The evidence she provided has resulted in 73 arrests and the recovery of over 2 billion naira in stolen funds." 2 billion naira. Nearly $5 million. The numbers were staggering, almost incomprehensible. What had started as Adanna's desperate escape from domestic violence had metastasized into one of the largest anti-corruption cases in Nigerian history. The defense attorneys took their turns trying to discredit her. They suggested she'd participated in the theft willingly. They implied she'd exaggerated the abuse for sympathy. They painted her as a scorned woman seeking revenge rather than justice. But every accusation crumbled against the mountain of evidence. Medical records documenting injuries, photographs of bruises, voice recordings of threats, bank statements showing the money laundering network, testimony from other victims who'd finally found the courage to come forward. On the third day of testimony, the judges, a panel of 5 led by Justice Okafor, a stern woman known for her intolerance of corruption, called for closing arguments. "Your Honors," Prosecutor Nwosu stood, her voice ringing through the courtroom. "This case is about more than one woman's suffering, though that alone would justify severe punishment. This case is about a system that protected abusers and enabled corruption because the people involved had money and connections. Mrs. Okonkwo's bravery didn't just save her own life. It exposed the rot at the heart of our institutions." The defense argued for leniency, for consideration of the defendant's previous good works, for mercy. But their words rang hollow against the evidence. Justice Okafor didn't deliberate long. "This court finds the defendants guilty on all charges. Mr. Chidi Okonkwo, you are sentenced to 25 years imprisonment for assault, money laundering, and conspiracy. Senator Okoro, you receive 30 years for corruption and attempted murder. Ms. Chidinma Azakayo, 15 years for obstruction of justice and conspiracy. Ms. Kemi Adelik, 20 years for theft and conspiracy." The courtroom erupted. Adanna felt her knees weaken as the reality of the verdict washed over her. 25 years. Chidi would be an old man when he was released. Her children would be grown. The monster that had haunted her nightmares was finally, truly caged. Outside the courthouse, thousands had gathered. When Adanna emerged, the crowd erupted in cheers. Women held signs reading, "We believe survivors," and "Justice for Adanna." News helicopters circled overhead. It was overwhelming, terrifying, and surreal. A journalist thrust a microphone toward her. "Mrs. Okonkwo, how do you feel about the verdict?" Adanna paused, choosing her words carefully. "I feel relieved, but also sad, because this victory came at such a high cost. 12 years of my life. My children's innocence. The trauma that we'll spend years healing from." She looked directly into the camera. "To every woman watching who's in an abusive relationship, I know you're scared. I know leaving seems impossible. But I'm standing here today because I chose to believe my life was worth saving. Yours is too. Please, reach out. Call a hotline. Tell someone. Don't wait 12 years like I did." The crowd pressed closer, and suddenly Adanna felt overwhelmed. The noise, the cameras, the expectations. It was too much. She'd been strong for so long, held together by sheer necessity. But now, with the trial over and justice served, the adrenaline that had sustained her began to drain away. "I need to see my children," she told her security detail. "Please." They whisked her away to a waiting car, leaving the celebration behind. As Lagos rolled past the windows, Chaotic and beautiful and impossible as always, Adanna checked her phone. Messages from around the world. Women thanking her for speaking out, organizations offering support, interview requests from every major media outlet. But the message she valued most was from her mother in Enugu. Come home, NWAM. Your room is ready. Let your children know peace. The word had taken on new meaning over these months. Not the mansion in Victoria Island with its blood-stained walls. Not even the safe house that had sheltered them during the trial. Home was wherever her children could laugh without fear, wherever she could sleep without listening for footsteps in the dark. The car pulled up to the modest house she'd rented in Acadia. Nothing fancy, but it was theirs. Safe. Protected. Through the window, she could see Emeka helping his younger siblings with homework, their faces relaxed in a way they'd never been in the mansion. Mama! They rushed to greet her, and Adanna gathered them close, breathing in the scent of their hair, feeling their heartbeats against her chest. Did Daddy go to prison? Obinna asked, his voice small. Yes, baby. For how long? A very long time. Good. It was Emeka who spoke, his face serious beyond his 12 years. He hurt you, Mama. He deserved it. Adanna cupped his face in her hands. Your father is sick, Emeka. Not physically sick, but sick in his heart and mind. What he did was wrong, and he has to face consequences. But hating him won't heal us. Only moving forward will. Do you hate him? Zainab asked. It was the question Adanna had asked herself every day for 3 months. Did she hate Chidi? The man who'd broken her arm, blackened her eyes, made her children afraid in their own home? No, she said finally. I pity him. He had everything, a beautiful family, success, respect. And he destroyed it all because he couldn't control his anger. That's not someone to hate. That's someone to feel sorry for. I don't feel sorry for him, Zainab said firmly. I'm glad he's gone. Adanna didn't argue. Her children's feelings were valid, their anger justified. Healing wasn't linear, and forgiveness wasn't mandatory. They would process this trauma in their own ways, on their own timelines. Her job was just to love them through it. That evening, after the children went to bed, Adanna sat alone on her small balcony, looking out at Lagos's glittering skyline. Somewhere in that vast city, there were other women suffering as she had suffered. Women who thought they were alone, who believed the lies that abuse was private, that leaving was impossible. Her phone buzzed. Another unknown number. Adanna's heart rate spiked. She still received threats regularly, anonymous messages from people who thought she destroyed a good man or exposed too much corruption. But when she opened this message, it contained only a photograph. 20 women standing together, holding signs with their names and stories. Survivors of domestic violence who'd come forward after watching Adanna's testimony. Women who'd finally found the courage to leave, to speak out, to refuse to be victims any longer. The caption read, "Thank you for showing us it was possible. You saved more lives than you know." Tears streamed down Adanna's face, not tears of sadness, but of relief and pride and overwhelming gratitude. She hadn't just survived. She'd helped others survive. Her pain had purpose. Her story had power. A year later, Adanna stood in a community center in Surulere, addressing a room full of women from across Lagos. She'd started a foundation, Speak Out Nigeria, dedicated to helping domestic violence survivors escape, rebuild, and heal. They provided legal aid, shelter, counseling, and job training. They'd helped 200 women in their first year alone. When I was trapped in my marriage, Adanna told the assembled women, I thought I was weak. I thought the abuse was somehow my fault. I thought leaving would destroy my children. She paused. I was wrong about all of it. Staying didn't protect my children. It taught them that suffering was normal. Silence didn't keep the peace. It enabled violence. And when I finally found the courage to leave, to fight back, to expose the truth, I discovered something I'd forgotten. I am strong. I always was. The women applauded, many wiping away tears. After her speech, a young woman approached, maybe 23, with bruises poorly concealed under makeup that Adanna recognized immediately. I want to leave my boyfriend, the woman whispered. But I'm scared. He's threatened to kill me if I go. Adanna took her hands gently. I know that fear. It's real, and it's valid. But you know what else is real? Your life is worth saving. And we can help you. She handed the woman a card with the Foundation's 24-hour hotline. Call this number. Tonight. We'll send someone to help you leave safely. You don't have to do this alone. The woman clutched the card like it was a lifeline. Maybe it was. That night, Adanna returned to her home, not the rental in Acadia, but a new house in Lekki Phase 2. Nothing as grand as the Victoria Island mansion, but it was bought with money she'd earned from speaking engagements and the book deal she'd signed to tell her story. It was truly hers. Clean. Safe. Free of ghosts. Her children were thriving. Emeka had joined the debate team and was talking about becoming a lawyer. Zainab had started a school program teaching girls about their rights. Even little Obinna, who'd been so traumatized by the violence, was laughing again, playing with friends, dreaming of becoming a pilot. They weren't perfect. They still had nightmares sometimes. Loud voices could trigger anxiety. They were all in therapy, working through layers of trauma that would take years to fully process. But they were healing, growing, becoming themselves in ways they'd never been allowed to before. Adanna tucked them into bed, kissed their foreheads, and whispered the words she said every night. You are loved. You are safe. You are enough. Later, sitting in her small home office, Adanna opened her laptop to check emails. Among the usual messages was one that made her pause. From Chidi Okonkwo, via Kirikiri Prison Communication System. Subject, I'm sorry. Her finger hovered over the delete button. She didn't owe him anything. Not her time, not her attention, certainly not forgiveness. But something made her click open. Adanna. I know I have no right to contact you. I know sorry is insufficient for what I did. But I'm writing anyway, not because I expect forgiveness, but because after 18 months in prison, I've finally had time to think about the monster I became. I was wrong. About everything. The violence, the control, the belief that I owned you. I destroyed the best thing in my life because I was too broken to see its value. Our children deserved better. You deserved better. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm just asking you to know that I see it now, all of it. What I took from you. What I stole from our family. And if I could undo even one moment of the pain I caused, I would. You are the strongest person I've ever known. I just wish I'd realized it before I tried to break you. Chidi. Adanna read the message 3 times, looking for manipulation, for the same excuses and justifications Chidi had always offered. But this felt different. Simpler. Maybe even genuine. She closed the laptop without responding. Maybe one day she would reply. Maybe she'd even find it in her heart to offer some form of forgiveness. Not for him, but for herself, to release the last hold he had on her emotions. But that day wasn't today. Today, she had women to help, children to raise, a life to build from the ashes of everything she'd lost. She'd survived the worst nightmare she could imagine. She'd exposed corruption, fought powerful enemies, and won. More importantly, she taught her children the most valuable lesson anyone could learn. That you are never too broken to be saved, never too trapped to escape, never too voiceless to speak truth. Adanna Okonkwo had gone to war with her demons and emerged victorious. Not unscathed, victory never came without scars. But alive, free, and finally, truly at peace. Her worst nightmare had become her greatest triumph. And somewhere in Lagos, in Abuja, in Enugu and Port Harcourt and 1,000 other cities, women who'd watched her story were finding their own courage to fight back, to speak out, to refuse to be victims any longer. The revolution she'd started with a single live stream continued to spread, one saved life at a time. And that, more than any courtroom victory, more than any sentence, was the real justice. She was free. And she would spend the rest of her life helping others find their freedom too. The end. But also, the beginning. Thank you for joining me on Adanna's journey. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, subscribe to Tales by Ben for more powerful stories, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Comment below with your thoughts. What would you have done in Adanna's situation? Where are you watching from? Your engagement helps this channel grow and reach more people who need these stories. Remember, you are strong, you are worthy, and you are never alone. Until next time, stay blessed.